So we're going to switch off audio and move on to a presentation from Justin Rigling from Rigado. He's going to be talking about Bluetooth and unlocking Bluetooth's potential. And we're moving into commercial markets. Justin. There you go. There you go.
Thanks, Chuck. Can't stand there. My name is Justin Rigling, CTO at Rigado, and I want to give you some of the experiences we've had working with a lot of companies who are trying to build products that service the commercial smart building industry. To do that, spend a little bit of time looking just through my lens, giving the perspective what the system looks like, commercial audio when I talk about that. Look a little bit about how mesh models are going to enable that, but what we need to do beyond mesh models. And then really, when we talk about smart buildings becoming Bluetooth enabled, I see some struggles there today in the way things are playing out, and we need to change that so that it becomes a platform that all Bluetooth technology can be using inside these smart buildings. So when I talk about a commercial IoT solution, it usually all looks very similar. On one side, we have Bluetooth devices that are things like conference rooms, desks, resources, something that we want to monitor. We might have badges on our employees. We might have guests inside a hotel that we want to track throughout that place. We might have some sort of thing like a lighting control or some sort of sensor. And those are all some sort of Bluetooth device, maybe Bluetooth 5, maybe mesh, maybe something like that. On the other side, we see a cloud where all that data from these devices needs to funnel to in order to do some sort of actionable business logic. Decide that, hey, our conference rooms are being utilized at nearly 100%. Maybe we need to reconfigure our space so that we've got more conference rooms available, or vice versa. Maybe there's a particular conference room that's not being utilized at all, and somebody can look into why that space isn't being used. That's all typically happening in the cloud, and what it takes is some sort of device in between to get that data from these Bluetooth infrastructure up into that cloud infrastructure. In consumer IoT, we see this done typically by your Android phone, your iOS phone, something that the consumer is carrying around. They already own, they already have it in their pocket. It already has a data connection through some cellular carrier. But in the buildings, we need some sort of infrastructure that does that. What that infrastructure needs to do starts with the connectivity to the Bluetooth devices. Right now, we're seeing a lot of things that are doing GATT-based connections still, which is great for a lot of low-power devices, but we've seen a lot of movement also to advertisement-based beacons where sensor data is actually packaged up in the advertising PDU. Not so secure, typically. And that's why I think mesh is a really big opportunity for us, because mesh brings a lot of new security models, really strong security models that enable us to kind of move off of those advertisement-based sensor devices in these commercial environments. Like the mobile phones that were typically used in consumer, since Bluetooth is not, most of Bluetooth is not IP, there is IPSP, but we don't see a lot of it being used in these cases. We need some sort of application running at the edge. We need some sort of, it doesn't matter what is written in, but something that's going to be taking and connecting to these devices, processing the data, sorting out duplicates, getting that information packaged up so it can be sent up to the cloud. We also see these gateway devices need some care and feeding, and that's a lot of what Rigado does, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. When I am in a conference and I meet with a lot of our customers, they ask me, okay, great. I believe this architecture, you say there's sensors over here and a cloud over here and some gateway in the middle. That makes sense to me. What sensors can I use with your gateway? What just works out of the box? And my answer in those situations is usually something like, well, it's Bluetooth 5, so you can do pretty much whatever you want with Bluetooth, and Bluetooth's great. And that answer is okay, but it's not good enough in a lot of situations, because what those vendors are typically looking for is go and buy like a horizontally based solution that's some sort of sensor that they can integrate with. In order to do that, we need to make sure that the mesh models are extended to cover all of these commercial use cases so that device vendors can focus their energy on things like, this is the environmental sensor that is monitoring CO2 or VOCs or something like that, and spend less time trying to figure out how to invent the protocol that makes that available to upper level software. Lighting is pretty good. Mesh model today has, it's kind of like the hands-free profile. I think it's the first one that's going to enter into commercial buildings, kind of be like that Trojan horse that is making Bluetooth kind of the obvious infrastructure in these buildings, and then once that infrastructure is in place, a lot of other things will happen. But unless we create better mesh models, everything's going to be vendor specific and nothing's going to work together. So I think there's already work being done in the mesh working group to extend all these models. I think that's obvious. What's a little less obvious is that I think it needs to go beyond just the models themselves. The vision that we have is that when we're talking about internet connected devices, the device manufacturers can do the mesh model side, but the software vendors that are typically working solution integrators, SIs, independent software vendors, those groups are used to talking to APIs in the cloud. They're used to talking to REST APIs or other mechanisms for exchanging data between servers. And when you tell them, okay, great, now go work with a GATT database, a lot of them stumble and they can't create that connection. So what I'm looking for, what I'm here to talk with anybody who is also seeing this situation, is coming with a higher level protocol that exposes these mesh devices in a consistent way with an API that's, what these web developers are used to working with. And I don't know if it's the right solution, but I've looked at things like the Open Connectivity Foundation, OCF. They have a resource type specification that covers things like energy management, energy savings, alerts, notifications, a whole bunch of different kinds of sensors. And they do that in a way that is REST-based or is built for an IP connectivity. So the big ask here is, yep, mesh is great, but I see what really makes Bluetooth excel in these commercial buildings is creating an API at a higher level that's standardized by Bluetooth and makes it in a way that all kinds of app vendors who are used to working with APIs can use it. So hopefully at this point you agree with me, but maybe not. Why is this a big problem for me? And I think it's not just for me. I mean, we make a gateway product that's supposed to go into commercial buildings. But what I see is that when we are working with companies today, what we typically end up seeing is that vendor, whether they're working on some sort of employee tracking solution, that conference room monitoring solution, they're trying to create the entire stack. So they've got staff on hand that's designing these sensors, so they do circuit boards. They've got firmware engineers inventing the protocol. They've got somebody making some sort of gateway, and then the software that runs on the gateway. And they're essentially creating an entire vertical solution that goes from each one of these devices to the cloud. And what ends up happening is that in any commercial building, take this hotel for example, you might have a different vendor solving this vertical solution in 6 or 7 or 10 different ways. And the hotel has to then install many different pieces of infrastructure. That's like asking a consumer that wants to get a fitness tracker to go buy another cell phone for each fitness tracker they want. They want a toothbrush. Okay, you have to go get a tablet in order to enable your toothbrush. That's not what Bluetooth promises. Bluetooth promises that, hey, we have an interoperable layer that everybody who already has a device in their pocket can get a new doorbell or something like that and just add it to the network at home and it works. But in commercial environments, we're not seeing that play out yet. The solution is what essentially looks like shared infrastructure. All these devices are going to be on a similar mesh, but it doesn't make sense for each application to run in separate device in the building. Instead, there should be a single device from a vendor that has a common API for exposing those mesh devices, so that whether you're talking to Azure or AWS or SAP or whatever it is, that has got a really common layer that is probably more up here than down at the mesh. This is the architecture that's enabling Bluetooth to actually take over commercial office buildings.